again, as Brian Kavanaugh said, and as I said, that we will never be in a position where we don't have to fight to preserve and keep the protections that we have, and there will always be an effort by the real estate lobby, which has a huge amount of power in our city and state, and their power comes from their money. And we will always have to fight to keep these laws on the books and to keep them from being watered down. That's just a reality. You know, I'm sure you'd be happy if I said, don't worry, we have nothing to worry about. These laws will be renewed. There's always a chance that we're going to lose ground, and we have to make sure we don't. And that's going to take some effort and some work. So, yeah, go to bed and go to good night's sleep, but get up tomorrow morning and join the phone bank.
Bloomberg.
What is Bloomberg's position? I'd like to know. You know, I call him Bloombucks.
So I will take a shot at the Bloomberg question. You'll recall that Mayor Bloomberg in the last go around, he took the position this was a purely private transaction and that there was no role for the city of New York. And in this current go around, the mayor has not been explicit about his view, although his housing commissioner, you will recall, Rafael Sestero, made an appearance on this stage when we met last in March, and has also been engaged and willing to explore ways to partner with the tenants on routes to achieving the goals that the Tenants Association has set out. I should share with you, I have made the mayor aware of our interest in protecting this community as affordable into the future directly. And his response was, do you have financing? And my response was, yes, we do, and we will. And he said, well, then we should continue to have this conversation. So that is I don't speak for the mayor, but I will tell you that while we were all disappointed at his position back in 2006, there have been some signs that the administration is perhaps more willing to engage with us this time.
I think it's a good. Let me just say, I think it's a good sign that the mayor has not leashed Commissioner Sestero yet the way he did in 2006, because you might remember there were city officials who wanted to help the Tenants Association at that time, and they were doing things behind the scenes until the mayor put the kibosh on it and said that, you know, this is a private transaction. They have a right to sell it for whatever they can get.
What is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's role as holders of senior debt?
As was
that's what I talked about at length earlier. If you want me to go through it again, I will.
No, I guess I interpreted. Maybe people need. Maybe the real question is, what is a senior debt holder really all about?
The senior debt holders' interests here are being represented by CW Capital, Susan. That's our primary and appropriate point of interaction with the senior part of the capital structure.
And Fannie and Freddie could play a very important part in our financing to make it affordable. And that's one reason I think that a public hearing where we can more clearly understand their role, an inappropriate role in buying the senior debt in the first place that helped finance the first deal, the disastrous deal. But they can play an important role working with your attorneys and elected officials in helping us solve it. And we want to make sure they do play an important, appropriate role. We'll be working with them and watching them.
Thank you. Why aren't we just fighting for maintaining affordable rent stabilization houses as opposed to staying affordable in a co-op condo conversion?
Well, I think the notion that Meredith spoke about really is to try to do both, to maintain affordability and long-term rental options for those who want to have it. But also, there are many people who want to buy their apartments, and in many different ways, different structures, and different limitations or market options. And so we've been trying to sort of thread the needle there, balancing those two elements. But keep in mind, in just keeping it the way that it is, one of the fears that your Tenants Association board has is that the next Tishman Speyer will come in a few years later and offer a big price above $1.9 billion to CW if it's in the rent stabilized rental only structure, and then try to do the same thing all over again. And so part of the reason for this is to try to gain ultimate control and a real say in the long-term management and operation of the community, so that just can never happen again.
I think I'm just going to do one or two more questions. We always face something very practical. Given the potential changes, is it better to renew my lease for 1 or 2 years?
We got to get rid of leases and go to statutory tenancy and get rid of this Russian roulette system. That's one of the reforms we want to do in Albany. But do a 1 year or 2 year lease. I mean, it's Russian roulette. I mean, there's really no answer to that. That's like asking us to predict what the board's going to vote on next year.
Perhaps, Susan, maybe the question was related to in a conversion scenario, whether I don't know what the question was related to, but Meredith, if somebody had an option to renew for 1 or 2 years, they would be renewing at whatever the rates that the Rent Guidelines Board prescribed, as Mike just mentioned. Would that have any implications for them as a potential buyer?
None whatsoever. None whatsoever. If you renew for a 1 year lease and then a conversion happens after year 1, you've got the right to renew, and then when you buy, you become a buyer. If you renewed for a 2 year lease and the conversion happens in the middle of your lease, you become a buyer. So there's no impact whatsoever on your right to buy. If you sign a 1 year lease or a 2 year lease, you always have got those renewal rights as long as the rent stabilization laws are renewed. Maintenance has nothing to do with the rent stabilized rent.
Okay, final question. My son has always lived with me, listed as occupant. If I pass away, does he inherit my apartment no matter what status the development is under, rental or co-op, rent stabilized or otherwise?
If you remain a rent stabilized tenant and don't purchase, then the rights of succession would still be in effect on an ongoing basis, and your son would have the right to take over the apartment in his own name if you were to move or die. If we keep these laws on the books.
Right. And in a condo or a co-op, again, shares and or units can be devised by will or by intestacy, and so absolutely, if you choose to leave it to your son, it's up to you. But if you choose to leave that asset to your son, then he will inherit it.
I want to thank you all very much. We have videotaped this meeting, so if you want to review it, it'll be up on our website at some point. And if you haven't filled out a membership form, there are plenty of them outside. Thank you.